Good morning, good afternoon. How's everybody doing?
Doing well.
Awesome. So, my name is Erin Walls. I'm going to be helping facilitate this conversation we're going to have today. I want to introduce the other people that are helping with me. So go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Hey folks, my name is Drew Lowe. I'm the Assistant Director of Facilities Management and Operations at the University of Notre Dame.
My name is Sarah Shea. I'm Assistant Director of Facilities and Aquatics at A&M Commerce.
I'm Chad Lowe. I'm Assistant Director for Strategy and Organizational Effectiveness at Ohio State.
All right, so I know a lot of us are starting to get dates that we can reopen and having guidelines set forth by either our states, our counties, our cities. So we're going to talk a little bit today. We're going to start off with, we're going to let you know what our respective universities are doing in regards to reoccupation, and then we'll open up for questions or anything else that y'all want to talk about. And please feel free to drop questions in the chat as we go. We'll help each other and ask each other the questions that are in the chat. So Chad, did you want to start off and kind of talk through Ohio State's reoccupation committee?
Yes. Do I have the ability to share my screen? Yeah, I do. Okay. So just this last week, we started essentially work teams. So we were, me and another chair were assigned to establish different subsects within rec sports. So if you can see our work team here, we just have a general work team with all the content, and then we've broken that up into our budget team, facilities, marketing communication, membership, programming, and then return for telework, which is essentially just our professional staff. Within each of those areas, we have assigned different action points for each, with chairs for each group. And the idea is that each of these teams are meeting on a weekly basis. Myself and the other chair of the entire committee are meeting Wednesdays and Friday mornings with our leadership team to provide updates for them, ask questions, and then returning that information back to each of our chairs, which we meet with them on Thursday afternoons. So each of these different teams, we've tried to collaborate. There's a lot of information out there, so we've tried to collect as much of that and organize it in a way that's useful, which is challenging because there's a lot of information, and obviously it's going to be specific to each state guidelines as well as federal. So we've actually gone through, we have a student life transition team as well that is working, and we are attempting to coordinate information with them as well, because as you can imagine, there's a lot of different decision makers, with the idea of trying to create as much of a plan ahead of time for multiple scenarios and being able to work with our student life team so that we're in compliance with whatever eventually comes down from the university standards. We're trying to be more proactive instead of reactive, as decisions will be made typically on a short-term basis, or very quick turnaround. So we're hoping that this will help sort of guide, because we are very different, as you can imagine, from housing, dining services. We have different facilities and different needs. So we're hoping that what we propose will be more of what the standard is, and what student life is eventually approves for all of our areas, so that we can have a better communication, a better plan for when we actually are provided the go to actually start. It looks like we're on a 6 to 8 week time plan to actually fully open. So when we are working towards that when that official word gets down, even though Ohio has signed May 26th as the date for gyms to open, we believe that it'll be much later before we actually open up our facilities. If there's any of this information that you would like us to provide or like me to provide, I'll put my email address in the chat, and I'd be happy to share that information with you. But if there's any information too, or questions you have on Teams too, I'd be happy to help with that too.
Awesome. Thanks, Chad. So again, I'm Erin Walls. I'll talk a little bit about Okay, so we got questions in the chat a little bit about face coverings and what's going on with those. I think that that's going to come down to what your state, local governments are telling you need to do. I know that Texas, we are not required to wear a mask in Texas. So that is not part of our reoccupation document. So I think that's going to come down a lot to what the governments are telling us. If anybody is thinking something different than what government is telling them, go ahead, please speak up. We'd love to hear about it. Nobody? All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what the University of Texas is doing for their reoccupation. We do not have an exact date yet. The governor has said that gyms are able to open on May 18th, but he has not said anything about higher education yet. So we're still working kind of with a moving target. So we don't have a date, but we're a little bit like Chad and Ohio State, where we need at least a 4 to 8 week lead time to get everything in place and everything ready to go. We also still don't quite have the supply chain for PPE and other disinfectants and things like that that would make us feel comfortable opening. We want to have at least a 30-day supply at this point, and we're not quite there yet. And we want to make sure that that supply chain can keep going. But we have 3 different phases that we're opening up in. We are doing an extremely slow roll. Phase 1 is going to be just our main flagship facility, Gregory Gym, and within that, we're only opening the main student weight room and 2 aerobics courts as well for more of informal recreation. And then also our outdoor field that is on campus. So our other 6 facilities will stay closed during phase 1. And then we have like a phase 1.5 going, and that's going to be based on demand. So that could be opening up Gregory Gym more, that could be opening another satellite facility. It's all going to be based on demand and the students being able to work. And again, going back to our PPE disinfectant supply chain. And then phase 2 really isn't going to be till we have students back on campus. And as of right now, the University of Texas system has said that in some way, shape, or form, there will be some on-campus classes in the fall, with that caveat that it's okay for health. So we plan on moving into phase 2 for our fall semester, and then phase 3 is everything's back up and running as normal. So that's kind of how we're phasing this out. We have a lot to do. We want to put some floor clings down, helping to talk about social distancing and things like that. So we still have a lot going on. So, hey Drew, you want to take the baton now?
Sure. Yeah. So Notre Dame is still in the very early stages of figuring out what our protocols are going to be. We are meeting at a university level right now to determine what is going to be open and when it's going to be open. Right now, there should be an announcement coming out for us on Monday, what the second half of our summer looks like. And then later on at the early part or middle part of June to determine what the fall looks like for us. So currently what we are doing is just internally putting together multiple options of what our reopening could look like, whether that be a staged approach for our different facilities, even just opening one, determining how many people we could allow in and then what spaces. So I think very similar to probably what a lot of other folks are doing. The differences for us, I think, are going to be, we have made the determination from the university level that we are going to go from a individual department ordering supply for all of our chemicals and PPE to a university level. So actually our custodial and building services staff are ordering for the entire university our year supply of disinfectants and chemicals, as well as all of our distribution centers, so that they will house those for us, and we won't have to do any individual ordering for any chemical for the year, which will be really nice.
Awesome. Thank you. Hey, Sarah, you want to go?
Yeah, sorry, I was reading some of the comments about masks. It looks like people are starting to type in there. So A&M Commerce, we're just starting these conversations. Right now on the 18th, we will be opening up our outdoor tennis courts, bike trails, and disc golf, and we have a hammock grove. We will not be offering hammocks to check out, so people would have to bring their own. We don't have volleyball up because that one's a little bit harder to social distance versus tennis. So we'll be taking our volleyball nets down because they are housed in the same complex as our tennis courts. As for our main facility, we have a range date of midsummer. Dates are not set in stone, but we have now established 3 committees. We have a programs subcommittee, operations, and then a risk management safety one. And those, we started the process yesterday. And so those subcommittees will be having weekly meetings, and then we will bring it back to the staff as a whole, kind of keeping us moving in that right direction. So yeah, we're just starting that. And so I'm really enjoying all the comments on here of what to do. As for the face masks, I saw a couple of questions on there. Right now, like Erin said, it's not a requirement, but I would not be surprised if I think we have been talking about staff, offering them for our staff if they feel comfortable with them. But patron use and gloves, like patrons mask, we haven't gone down that. We have decided as a university, we're not going to do temperature checks at the door, which I know some businesses are doing. But masks are still kind of up in the air of how we're going to handle that. But if staff are comfortable doing it, the first line is making sure our student staff are comfortable coming back when we can get them back. So the mask is kind of the first thing we're looking at, and we're still figuring out if that's something department we're going to have to purchase or if it is going to go to a university.
Awesome. So I see one question. I'm going to start with a question from Stephanie Plummer about if you are student fee based, are you planning just to open to students first and restricting some other access? I can tell you a little bit about what Texas is doing. We're only doing students and members at this time. So that would be our faculty and staff as well that have that had memberships before COVID-19 hit. We will not be doing guest passes. We will not be selling new memberships at this time during phase 1. Phase 2, we might be bringing all of that back on, but it's strictly right now is just students and people that previously had memberships. No guest passes, no nothing else like that. Can anybody else talk to what they're doing membership wise going forward?
I just popped it in the comments, but we are during UMaine in phase 1 is doing the exact same thing. We're only allowing students and folks that have current memberships. So no day passes, no new memberships.
Anybody else doing anything different? All right. The other topic I was asked to bring up is, can we talk about how we're going to train our students when we reopen? Again, I can speak to a little bit about what Texas is doing. We're not opening Aquatics, so we're not even going to kind of talk about the lifeguard and in-service portion of it. But we are going to bring in students from all of different areas. So we're going to have to cross-train during this time. And we've started going through how we're going to do this. We just recently finished up a new employee orientation module that's going to be online. So that will help us. And then our in-person trainings are going to have to be smaller. They're going to have to be more of like a 1-to-3 ratio instead of like those bigger groups that we would take around to do facility trainings and things like that. And setting up a classroom like we would social distancing to go over policies and procedures. Is anybody doing anything fun or interesting to train, or even different than what Texas is doing?
So I was thinking like a little bit further back in terms of what materials are we putting together for our student staff to even enter the building? Like, you know, what do they need to be wearing when they are doing their job, stuff like that. Like, does anyone have any materials that they're providing for their students in terms of like that portion of the risk management?
Like talking to them about like cough etiquette and what social distancing means. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes.
Yes, we have put something together like that. I can definitely email that to you. If you drop your email address in the thing, I can send you what we've put together so far, but we have put together it's kind of like almost between our human resources and our student personnel on facilities, it's kind of like a mixture of those two things. It talks about the different signs and symptoms. We are doing temperature checks, and I saw a comment in there. We are doing one of the infrared temperature scans that are touchless. So we actually started back a little bit this week. We're allowing some locker access for graduating seniors so they can go get their stuff. So we do have some students in the building right now just for that. And we're temperature checking our employees as they come in and talking through the symptoms and making sure. We also teach them how to put their gloves on and teach them about masks and how over the nose and over the mouth and tight. So all of this is listed in this document, but then I'd be happy to share that.
Thank you.
Yeah, does that help?
Yeah, totally. I was asked to develop that portion of our training for our department. So I just wanted to see what was already out there. But I really like your point. You know, we're going to have to still train our staff in each area. So I like your point of like it needs to be in a smaller context, you know, the trainer and then maybe only 3 students at a time. So.
Mm-hmm. Has anybody else started working on those type of documents and kind of wants to talk about that, please?
Erin, we have a really rough outline of that, what that entails, and that'll be tasked to one of our work teams to sort of develop that and what that entails. I know there is a piece for virtual training, discussing all the different points of social distancing, PPE, cleaning obviously will be a major part of it. And just the education of our patrons as well. What type of solutions we are using, what methods and means are we to actually cleaning each day, just so everyone's educated. Also providing signage throughout the facilities too will be a big piece of that, and trying to educate everyone involved.
Adi Servideo from the University of Central Arkansas. Every semester we do CPR skills tests for every one of our employees, student workers, because they're all CPR certified. I've been working on that, and I am adding how to remove gloves and how to dispose of them at the end of the day. And also in the event that we have to perform CPR, the American Heart Association has been sending out their ECC newsletters, and we are doing just hands-only CPR. So there will be no breaths. And the training center has advised that once you start CPR, you keep doing compressions until an AED or the EMS arrives. So that's part of our risk management training that we're going to do. And we are opening June 8th for students only in phase 1. Still working on phase 2, which would be July 8th, July 6th, I believe, and still planning for a full fall opening August 20th, unless things change.
I did see Stephanie ask, since we kind of talked a little CPR there for a second, talking about providing care and ventilations and CPR during this new normal. I know I've heard on a call, there was an Aquatics call the other day where they were talking about BVMs. So not a lot of us use C-Pro for our building staff, but all of our lifeguards do have C-Pro. And we have decided that we're going to have lifeguards just because we want to keep them on staff and we want them to be able to stay around so we don't lose them to the city pools if those do open. So we have decided we're going to keep lifeguards on and they're going to be responding to our emergencies. So we're working to get BVMs with HEPA filters in them right now. So that's one of our big things. We're also talking about getting the plastic face shields and gowns for them. So is there anybody else that's keyed into that and is looking to get even more protective equipment for some of those students that respond to emergencies?
Erin, at Notre Dame, we actually are in the process. We're actually transitioning all of our staff, no matter what position they work, into the C-Pro certification. And obviously just by chance, but that actually is going to help us, just like you mentioned with the BVM respondent piece of one of the considerations we are really looking into and have questions about is, even if it's a hands-only CPR, you're still basically that respiration is leaving their body somehow, some way. So having that BVM be the most effective way of capturing those particles is something we're looking into. I haven't heard of the HEPA filter piece, so if you have any of that stuff, would you mind sharing?
Yeah, this is new to me. I'd never really heard, I'd never heard of that HEPA filter before, and I was looking them up earlier. I'm gonna drop a link in the, sorry, I'm looking it up right now. I'm gonna drop a link in the, so this is where we were looking to get them, and it kind of talks about it. Is this what it is? Yes, this is what you want.
Also, just to kind of go back to Chad's comment of providing those resources for the campus community, one thing that we have talked about is actually making educational videos of what chemicals we're using, how to properly spray down the machine, all of those things. And we're going to be tagging those to all of our marketing TVs in all of our centers, as well as the pieces of fitness equipment, so that is constantly scrolling on the equipment pieces that are down, so that it's educating the public of how to appropriately clean when they're done and before they start using.
I also wanted to say that we're going to require they wear goggles because we don't have access right now to those face shields when doing CPR. So we're going to provide those as well, which we already have in our bloodborne pathogens buckets.
Yeah, that's part of our conversation, is if we can't find the plastic shields, to do goggles as well. Yep. So there was one link I dropped there that kind of talks about what the HEPA filters are. And then this was the other one that had the BVM with it already in it. So just give me a sec.
And Erin, while you're doing that, I was going to share a little bit.
Yeah.
If you don't have the face shields, goggles are your next best bet on the EMS side for any COVID potential. Literally what you put on is your gloves, your gown, N95, and glasses. I don't even use a face shield when I work on an ambulance. We have glasses for that situation on our trucks. So if you're doing, so like someone commented, well, if you're doing only compressions, you're still going to have that risk, then I would definitely recommend getting N95s as well. And then also, ideally, if you can do an N95 and potentially even a paper mask over it, that is a lot of materials. But if you do an N95, they can potentially be reused if you work with your hospital. And then also, I learned too this recently, that depending on how big your county is, some of this material is going to be really hard to get, especially the HEPA filters and the BVMs. It might get back ordered. So you could talk to your county and any hospitals and see if potentially contracting with them, or talking to if you have a health center on campus, talking to them and seeing if you can contract with them and order supplies through them. And then potentially you're going to get it a lot quicker versus going on Amazon or the Red Cross. So try to see if you can work some of those connections, and that will kind of help you get some of these resources that are going to be scarce at first.
Great. Do we have anything else we want to hit on kind of on that first aid protocol right there? Please feel free. Jump in.
Is anyone considering certifying? So right now, UMaine just certifies our staff in just like the basic CPR. Is anyone considering upping that standard and getting and certifying their staff in more than just their lifeguards and CPR Pro?
I know that that has been a topic of conversation. We are not planning on doing that at University of Texas, but if there's other places that are thinking about doing it, how are you going to do it? I'd love to hear it.
Hey, this is Joshua Deakins at the University of Washington. I also am a trainer for the American Red Cross, and all of our staff currently are adult-only CPR trained. We don't have any minors in our buildings, but because we are considering the BVM use and some of this extra protocol, we are potentially upping some of those certifications to the level of professional rescuer. For those of you who are American Red Cross, if you're having your lifeguards being the ones responding, they do have that specific training, so they may be a better choice. The other thing that we're also doing to keep costs down is creating COVID-specific response bags. So your normal PPE precautions should be sufficient for providing care to your normal average Joe. So I understand a lot of the fear around it, but it is something to consider.
Yes.
Hey, this is Rebecca from Boston College.
Hey, Rebecca.
Sorry, just making sure. We actually, all of our staff are CPRO certified through Red Cross, and we have 11 staff on our staff that are instructor certified, so that helps cut down on the cost as well. The other justification we used with our university to get this is it's a more seamless transition when EMS arrives because it's closer to their level of certification. So if you're looking for more justification beyond the pandemic to get to that level, just start talking with your EMS, your police department, and just seeing what they have to offer. They also may be instructor certified at that level, and they may be able to help out as well, getting more instructor classes and also just general classes for you on your campus.
I saw I saw an LGI class. One of my friends on Instagram had done an LGI class this week. Has anybody else started to venture? I know I see some people kind of like, what? Is anybody else started teaching stuff yet?
I thought we weren't supposed to.
That's what I thought too. So I was really confused. So, but there are pictures on Instagram. I was like, interesting. Awesome. I saw a question a while back. Is it okay if we move on? And I saw somebody asking a question about how we're getting participants into our facilities and how we are we doing time frames, like you register for an hour, or kind of letting people in, then a one out, one in system. How are people allowing people in and keeping track of that?
So at UMaine, I just got off a call and we were talking about this. We're thinking about trying to use RecTrack as a way for people to reserve times, but we're not sure to what capacity if that could hold all of our membership capacity. So that's just somewhere we're looking to. And we're also trying to consider an easy application that folks can just like pull up on their phone, but that's where we're at.
If someone that's using Fusion can kind of speak to that, please, that'd be awesome. And how they're doing it. I'll call somebody out.
Erin, we're gonna set up a call with Fusion because we're talking to them about a couple other things, just in terms of monitoring, being able to set up our exit procedures that we currently don't have set up. So happy to share that with you after we have set that up and kind of have our protocols in place.
Awesome.
On one of the calls yesterday, one of the fusion reps was there, and they indicated that they've stepped up some upgrades for their live tracking and ability to update those versus just having it rely on the swipe system. So they did say that. One of the things I've been toying with is whether we can modify our squash court booking system to allow gym access time for people to sign up for an hour block to come into the building.
So are you doing like, oh, sorry, can I just ask one question? So are you doing like an hour and then taking 15 minutes in between to clean? Like, what is that looking like? Are you doing
Still very preliminary, but we would probably look at something similar to that where, okay, I want to sign up to come into cardio zone 1, which is our treadmills, and you can do an hour block, and then we do a cleaning with our staff through preliminary stages on that.
Has anybody seen the Lifetime video, the Lifetime Fitness video, and how they're talking through with their participants, I guess, about what they're doing? And they're doing something similar where you can sign up for a 1 hour and then they shut down for 30 minutes and they clean and then they open for an hour, 30 minutes. Let me see, people please keep talking. I'm gonna see if I can find that video and throw it into the chat. But what else is everybody else doing?
I think I have a concern with that one because you give people a little bit of a false sense of security when you say, hey, I'm going to be open for like an hour and 15, I'm going to put 45 minutes and then clean the facility. You have to be very careful on what you're agreeing legally, saying you're wiping down every piece of equipment or just certain sections or high touch points. At least that's what our legal office is coming back to us. So we may be doing that hour and 15, but we're going to say high touch points. And if we can get to other equipment, that's great. But just like a reset for 30 minutes and then going on to the next one. But for us also, we're trying to keep locker rooms closed. So keeping it at that hour 15 also limits their ability to try to go into those spaces to shower.
Something that we're looking at doing at Loyola University in Chicago is creating little flip books. So it's a green card if the machine's good to get on. And after you've run, you need to flip it to the red card. Red card means don't get on this machine. It hasn't been cleaned by a staff member yet. We're also talking, just to Rebecca's point, about risk mitigation, not risk elimination. We are making sure that's clear in all of our terminology, that you should clean the machine before you get on it anyway. You should clean the machine after you get on it anyway. But that red card, green card will help us both space out patrons a little bit, but also help us keep track of what we've cleaned lately.
That's a great idea. Is anybody else doing anything cool?
Well, the one thing that risk mitigation, this is Kristen from University of Arkansas, what I would just make sure is you're really looking in that EPA list 9 is for COVID-2, not COVID-19. Dig into what you're being supplied. For total disinfection, a lot of them are 10 minutes, and that's what seems to be getting lost. They see a 15-second, but aren't really digging in there of the total time it needs to sit. Be careful of anything with bleach on your equipment. So that's where we really are focusing on that risk mitigation of saying, hey, just because you wiped it down doesn't mean that it's actually clean. It has to sit for this long. Even when we are applying it, that's why it's in a card system. So that's where that false sense of security is coming in. We're seeing with our local gyms of people are saying it's clean and they're not having the applicable time to kill it. So I just encourage really diving into that.
One thing that has been said in our reopening documents by our governor is that everything has to be cleaned in between each use. And so one person uses it, the next person uses it, and it has to get cleaned in between. We are putting a lot of that onus back on the participants as well, because we can't get in there and do every single piece of equipment after every single use. So, and I know if anybody from A&M is on this call, they can kind of talk about, they're doing announcements over their PA every 15-ish minutes to talk about that and to talk about and to reiterate that patrons need to be cleaning as well. Is anybody from A&M? OC, are you in here by chance? Anybody from A&M want to talk about that? Sorry. I read that in their reoccupation document. So I thought that that was a really cool idea too, is putting that over the PA system every 15 minutes. You need to be cleaning. It's kind of almost like it's kind of on you as well.
To go back to Kristen's point about the cleaning piece, one of the pieces of verbiage that we're going to be using is that there's a big difference between the piece of equipment is clean versus the piece of equipment has been sanitized. So that's something that we're working at from a university level to make sure that people understand what the differences are.
Erin, to your, we aren't necessarily looking at announcements, but I think the university as a whole has discussed, for lack of a better term, like social contracts with the students, almost an understanding of the differences of what's kind of expected of them across the university, and just trying to keep things clean throughout, not just at our facilities, but throughout everywhere. So I think that would be something that we will touch on and potentially could post within our facilities as well. And kind of
at 24-hour fitness, we can't wait.
Sorry.
It's okay. And just general guidelines of what the expectation is for all of our students and patrons.
Has anybody else seen anything in the comments we need to ask about, that we need to bring up? Hey, Rebecca, do you want to talk a little bit about how you calculate, how you're doing that 144 square feet per person, and why you pick that number and what that's looking like for y'all?
It's that 6 feet of distance around you for the most part is where we came up. It was in, I don't remember if it was the ACH guidelines or if it was something else that we were looking at that we came up with that number. But then it's our space, our building's new, so we're kind of lucky that we have all the square footage pretty readily handily to us in all of our documents. So we can go in, and then we have all the measurements of the equipment, so we account for that as well. And then spacing, so we can kind of understand, yes, this is the number of people that can actually physically fit in the space if you had no equipment, but once you put the equipment in, what does that look like? And then we kind of just add those up, because we're just going to be a fitness center for the most part for the first little while. We will look to add maybe some of our equipment on the bigger spaces in the basketball courts or mat courts. But for right now, we have no students on campus over the summer, so we're just opening back up for faculty and staff that are going to be hopefully returning soon. So that's kind of how we're getting those numbers. And then someone had asked earlier about accounting for your staff. We're only doing capacity numbers on the fitness spaces specifically. So our staff is then accounted for in our large hallways, our meeting rooms, those types of things for the rest of the building in their areas. We're only allowing one person per desk or one person per area. So for that, we're also meeting that standard of 6 feet of separation as well. Does that answer what you're looking
Yes. Is anybody else, I know that we're using 100 square feet for phase 1, and then we loosen it up for like 1.5 and 2.0. So we've started with 100 square feet. Has anybody else started looking at that and picked a number that they're using? Or are you just looking at overall capacity numbers?
I know at UW, my supervisor and I have had a lot of conversations specifically around the pool. It's not just about the pool space, but we've been looking more at our deck space in case of fire emergency or fecal incident or something like that and needing to get everyone out. So we've been taking it space by space, not just entire building, but our climbing center is a separate space. The pool is a separate space. Do we use gyms? Do we have the mat stretching areas open? So we've been taking it square room by square room.
Yeah, we did the same thing.
This is TJ from Colorado State University. We're still waiting to hear from our state as far as their recommendations and requirements for capacity and spacing. But we've been going off anticipation from states around us. And I know the state of Wyoming released that it's 1 person per 120 square feet. And also 9 persons per room. And so we're starting to look at our, open floor areas, breaking those up into, quote unquote rooms to base our 9 people off of, as well as maintaining that 1 person per 100 or 120 square feet.
Awesome. So another one that I got was, we've talked about this a couple times, and especially in the facilities ones, if you've been in there, but can anybody talk to the electrostatic sprayers and if they currently have one? I know ours are on back order right now, so they're not in yet. But if anybody has one and is already using them, can you speak to that? Like, Max, I think you're talking about like the Clorox 360s and such.
Yeah, those kind of sprayers. And I think, what is it? CFE has a sprayer out there. And then like Protexis has a cordless electrostatic sprayer. Yes, stuff of that nature.
Does anybody already currently have one and want to speak to those, please?
Yeah, so Max, we have them at Notre Dame. They were procured from a university level. So again, we're kind of upping all of those to figure out how many each facility needs. But we'll have not only the electrostatic sprayers, but we have also purchased a bunch of pressurized spray bottles. So not just like the normal spray bottle, but I'm sure people are familiar with this, but like the Febreze 1 bottles that you have that continuous even spray. So we'll be using the normal quaternary agents in those as well.
Okay, Drew, is your pro staff using those or is your student staff using those?
So that's the discussion right now. Right now, it's going to be professional staff and then our full-time housekeepers. But the discussion is, I mean, if it's safe enough for us to use and with training, if everybody would feel comfortable, we'd obviously allow the students to use those as well. They're really easy to manage. It's really just point and spray.
And then are you using those like at night to get ready for the next day, or using throughout? Are you going to pick times to do it throughout the day? When exactly are you going to use them? Do you have thoughts on that yet?
Yeah, so right now they're being used, or they were planning to be used. We got them right before everything kind of shut down, but we were planning on using them overnight. But that's when the university only had like 4 of them. So we're actually going to have 4 dedicated units just for our rec sport spaces now. So we will most likely use those if we have some downtime, or as much as we possibly can use them. But most likely it will be during the times that we are closing to clean the facility before we reopen. And then while we're open, the majority of the usage will be the pressurized spray bottles.
And correct me if I'm wrong, they need about an hour dry time, right?
It really depends on the chemical you're using. And it doesn't necessarily, from what we've been told, it doesn't necessarily matter if it's still damp, if people are using it. It's more of just like educating the folks that just because it's damp doesn't mean it's dirty. It just means that it needs as much dwell time as possible, so we won't be wiping any of that surface down. The thing we're trying to figure out is a lot of quaternary agents sometimes can leave that milky residue at the end of it if they build up over time. So we're really just figuring out if there needs to be a general purpose cleaner after the fact, like at the end of the day before we spray it down again, or in between, or how often that needs to happen.
Okay.
Yeah, I always had that question for anybody that is using it, because I was looking into that, and our SSE custodial is also looking into it. If anyone that is currently using it, does it leave that residue? And then a colleague of mine said they were once going to buy it, but then they were concerned that they couldn't guarantee it wouldn't cause rusting on some of the equipment. So if anyone has been using, I think someone commented on here that they've been using it for a while. Does it leave residue? Has it done any rusting on any of the equipment or anything like that? But okay. Okay. Awesome. Thank you for that.
And the product, so one of the questions is, what product are you using in your sprayers? And it depends on which sprayer you purchase, correct? Because can you intermix products with sprayer? Does my question make sense?
I can answer that. We have the Protexis sprayer guns at UC Davis. And so the Protexis comes with, they're almost like Alka-Seltzer tablets that drop in there, and they have the chlorine mixture in there. So that's the only thing that we have been instructed to put in there. However, within our facility, we do have the gym wipes that are available, and the also regular spray bottles and towels for our staff to walk around as well. But as far as that complete sanitizing 360, it's just the tablets.
Awesome. Sorry, my Teams is going on. What else? What else? What other questions do we have? So I'm getting a question about aquatics. And so the state of Texas has allowed for pools to open, Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, this Friday.
I think
is it Friday or is it the 18th?
I believe it was indoors on the 18th, but I thought outdoors was still not allowed yet.
Okay.
Is what I had written down.
So the governor is allowing one date, but then he writes a little caveat in there, and it says, but this is based on what your local government is going to allow for community pools. So he's saying they can open, but only if your local government allows it. So the city of Austin is still on a lockdown, on a stay at home. So we are at home till the end of May, but the county, Travis County, has us at home until June 15th. So we don't 100% know about aquatics. So as of right now, it's looking like June 15th is maybe the first day we might be able to get pools back open, but we don't know yet. It's all based on what the local government is going to do. Has anybody else heard anything about pools? I think Wyoming gets to open pools. Did I hear that right? Anybody from Wyoming?
Well, I'm not from Wyoming, but Ohio just announced yesterday that on May 26th, both gyms and pools regulated by a health department are allowed to open. So I know that we're now starting to look at our reopening plans, and I did have a question also kind of related to pools. For those who are talking about opening without a locker room, has there been any concern about the increase of other infections like UTIs when you can't change out of a wet swimsuit?
For us, locker rooms is state mandated. We cannot open them yet, so that's not even our option for it. And we're doing lots of we're putting together our communication. Like Chad said, communications and marketing is on our reoccupation committee, and we're putting together mass communications that we will send out about talking about how you have to come in your suit and you leave in your suit. You come in whatever you're going to work out in, and you leave in whatever you're going to work out in. But that has not been a topic of conversation yet.
There's a couple of the pools in Atlanta are opening up this next week, today maybe, and starting swim lessons next week.
Whoa.
And they must be just pools. I reached out to a couple of them, and they're limiting classes to 4 students, ask that students come dressed and ready to swim, and then leave in their swimsuit, wrapped in a towel or clothes. Avoid using restrooms and showers and changing, for emergencies only. Classes will meet their instructor at the entrance, and parents are asked to wait in their car for the duration of the lesson. And then extra time in between classes to clean.
It's looking like if pools are open, they're only open for like swim or aerobics or things like that. No informal recreation as of yet.
Right. And
that question. So for that question, how are anybody, if you are planning on opening your pools, how are you in-servicing your guards with the whole 6 feet rule?
I know that we're talking about doing some virtual stuff. They're going to have to do virtual trainings, and we're also talking about we have an 80-person lifeguard staff, so we're talking about having to do mini mini in-services where we spread out mannequins and they can work on a mannequin. That's one way we can do it. We've also talked about swimming laps can be part of in-service, so doing that. But again, in the state of Texas, and this is why Sarah's probably asking, it's mandated 4 hours by law. So if we're reopened, we have to figure out a way to do 4 hours per month of in-service. So any ideas that people are coming up with, we would love to hear them.
Yeah, and not even by law, but for me, our guards haven't been in a pool because we're only an outdoor pool. They haven't been in the pool in over 6 months, probably, if I'm doing my math right. So I'm not even confident that they could backboard right now in the water as a team like they need to. How do I get that training? How does any of us get that training and get our pool open with this 6 feet rule? And then what Red Cross is kind of telling us as well. So I'm just throwing that out there. If anyone has found the loophole of way of doing it, I'm all ears, because that's kind of had me stumped a little bit.
So pools in Arizona have started to open up, and in conversations with them, it sounds like a lot of them are limiting the size of their in-services and spreading them out throughout the week, and then making sure that their guards are sanitizing regularly or like washing their hands regularly, distancing when they can. Obviously during rescues you can't, but they are still holding in services and doing those in-water rescue skills, and then just making sure the guards are protecting themselves when by washing their hands and distancing when possible. And we're going to follow something pretty similar when we open. We don't have a date yet, but our plan is to do something pretty similar, because we do have to hold in services, and you're right, our guards haven't been in the water for such a long period of time that it's definitely going to be something we have to hit hard from the beginning.
I just dropped the link in the chat about Megan had talked about the Red Cross released the virtual, some of the virtual stuff. So I just dropped that link in there if anybody wants to check that out.
I've read through the Red Cross stuff, and the caveat that, like Sarah said, there's not really a loophole for is that in-water skills must be done in person when local guidelines allow. And as long as we can't be more than 6 feet apart, there is no answer to properly doing in-water training, in my professional opinion. And I have seen quite a few people that have mentioned the full mannequins, which, you know, it's great if you have them to do certain things. But if you're doing extrications, if you're doing spinal backboarding, there's no way around getting within 6 feet of each other. And not everybody has those mannequins to even do the few skills that you can do with them. And those of us that don't have them probably aren't allowed to buy them, because I know at the University of Houston, we are currently on a purchasing freeze. I can't buy anything. We have to get special permission just to get the chemicals for our pool. So the short answer, in my professional opinion, is we cannot properly do in-water training with social distancing. And the people that aren't following social distancing guidelines. It's just how it is. We have to make the decision for our own teams on what level of risk we're willing to accept. And for me, I'm not willing to accept it.
I actually had a question for those who are planning on opening in regards to masks on the pool deck. So I've been doing a lot of research. We're using the risk matrix from Connect 2, if anyone's kind of looked at that. And I've been pretty much gathering like supplemental information from CDC, American Red Cross, et cetera, compiling like what their recommendations are and then what that means for us. And one of the things it talked about was the use of face masks even before getting into the water. So one of the thoughts I kind of was having was, does that mean we have to put out like bins for the patrons to put their masks in, because we don't want them like putting them on the deck and we want them to have them on as long as possible? Like that's kind of nitty gritty stuff, but I'm just wondering if anyone's planning on doing anything with masks and how you're allowing patrons to kind of have them on deck. Are you making them available for patrons and then you're responsible for laundering them? Like anything like that. I'm really sorry if I missed that earlier. I hopped on a little late.
It's okay. We haven't talked about that yet. Has anybody started thinking about that as well?
I know for us, we just got off of a student affairs division.
Hey, Jacob, where are you at? What school are you at?
Oh, Georgia State University. We just got off a student success town hall this morning, and they basically said that because the governor is only recommending masks, that we would not be purchasing masks for our staff, let alone our patrons, to use while in the facility. But I think we're going to be able to still swing it to where that we can buy masks for custodial and lifeguards for first responding. But yeah, just because the governor hasn't, or we're taking our cues up from government and one USG. So yeah.
Yeah, face masks are going to be so area dependent in what their government is mandating. Because I know, like up in Rhode Island, to walk outside your door, you have to have a mask on. But then here in Texas, it's recommended, not required. So every area is just going to be so different with masks and what they're going to allow. And masks have become a hot topic. And so there's been some tragedies over asking people to wear masks. I know that's out there in people's thought processes as well. And this has been brought up in a number of calls that I've been on. And we really are looking at the University of Texas, looking into having our UTPD and having presence for those first couple days that we're open, to make sure that people are working with our staff members and keeping that social distance, and just making sure that everything goes smoothly. So I know that was brought up on some calls that I've been on, and we really took that to heart, that other schools were going to do that. And so we want to protect our staff as well. Is there any last minute questions we want to throw out there?
Erin, it looks like Jimmy had one regarding masks and cardio and patrons. Wearing masks while working out and doing cardio. So like Erin said, in Texas, it's recommended, but right now in our plan and what I've talked to our director, we are not moving in that direction of requiring anyone to wear a mask, much less a patron in a mask doing cardio. In my professional opinion, is not probably the safest thing. I don't know about y'all, but when I wear a mask and I'm running around the grocery store, I'm already winded, much less on a treadmill. So I know for us, that is not a direction that we are looking to go, mostly because of the safety concerns that we would have with patrons doing that.
Hey, Francis, if you have a set, can you drop any of those links for the research that you've been looking at about the cardiac and wearing masks, cardio and wearing masks? That would be awesome if you could do that. So today went by like that. Lots of conversation, lots of questions, lots of good of info being shared. What are we thinking? Do we want to do another one of these? Do we want to do it in a week? Do we want to do it in 2 weeks? Throw your thoughts in the comments, and we will see what we can do. So it's looking like 2-ish weeks. So people have a little bit more that they know about what's going on in their local areas or their opening. All right. This looks good. This looks good. Awesome. Awesome. All right. We want to thank you all. Today went really well. Great conversation. Thank you so much. Everybody have a great weekend, and we will work with NIRSA to see if we can get, hi baby. Does everybody see Drew's little baby in there? Hi baby. So we'll work on getting another one of these up and going. Sound good? Have a great weekend. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.